Daniel slid the papers across my kitchen table like he was offering a menu, not my future. Dad, just sign here. It's all routine stuff. Tax efficiency. Protection. You don't need to read every line. The pen was already angled toward me, ready, like he'd expected compliance, not consideration. I stared at the stack. 6 pages, clipped neatly. Too neat. My name printed on every line in bold. Routine, he repeated, tapping the signature box. My throat tightened. I just pulled a tray of muffins from the oven, blueberry, his favorite, because I'd stupidly thought today was a visit, not a transaction. The kitchen still smelled warm and sweet, but inside me something turned metallic. I'll look through it, I said. Just give me a few minutes. Daniel exhaled sharply. That impatient little hiss he used as a kid when the Wi-Fi lagged. Dad, come on. I don't have all day. Melissa's waiting in the car. I glanced out the window. She wasn't waiting, she was scrolling on her phone, sunglasses on, engine running. The way she barely looked at the house told me exactly how temporary she believed my presence here was. Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, scanning the kitchen like he was appraising a property he already owned. This is just to help you, you know. You said the insurance emails confuse you. This will simplify things. I hadn't said confused. I'd said annoying. But he'd taken the word and softened it, twisted it, turned it into incapability. My phone buzzed on the table. A new notification, your bank statement is ready. I caught him glancing at it, not with curiosity, calculation. I picked up the first page. Something small flickered in the corner, an unfamiliar legal phrase. Transfer of interest. My pulse jumped. Why does this mention transfer? I asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. Dad, you're overthinking. It's boilerplate. Boilerplate. Another word that meant don't question me. He took the stack back before I could reach the second page and flipped straight to the signature. Just sign. You trust me, right? A simple question. Heavy as a verdict. I looked at his hands. Clean nails, expensive watch, that little tremor he gets when he's stressed. I knew that tremor. I'd seen it when he hid bad report cards, overdue bills, lies he wasn't ready to confess. Of course I trust you, I said, but my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. He pushed the pen closer. Then let's get it done. There it was, that subtle shift. Not a request. Expectation. My chest tightened in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not anger. Not yet. Something smaller. Sharper. A splinter. Outside, Melissa honked once, impatient, rehearsed, like she knew exactly what I was supposed to do next. I smoothed the papers with my hand. The kitchen light flickered overhead, buzzing softly, and suddenly I felt the room tilt, as if the walls themselves knew something I didn't. Routine papers. Routine signatures. Routine trust. And yet every instinct in me whispered, something is wrong. I capped the pen instead of uncapping it. I'll read it tonight, I said quietly. Daniel froze. Just for half a second, but enough. His expression slipped, revealing something sharp underneath. Fine, he said too quickly. But don't delay. It's time sensitive. When they left, the house fell painfully silent. I sat alone at the table, the papers cold beneath my hand. I didn't know what the truth was yet. But somewhere deep inside me, something small and old and quiet, finally cracked open. I didn't know what the truth was yet. But somewhere deep inside me, something small and old and quiet, finally cracked open. By the next morning, that crack hadn't closed. It sat behind my ribs like a bruise I couldn't name. I made coffee, opened the curtains, tried to settle into the familiar rhythm of my quiet kitchen, yet everything felt slightly off, as if the house itself was watching me think. At 9:12 a.m., Daniel texted. Daniel, morning Dad. Did you read the papers? Need them signed today. Daniel, please don't overcomplicate this. That last line burned a little. Don't overcomplicate. as if wanting to understand my own signature made me difficult. I typed nothing back. By noon, I'd thrown myself into chores I didn't need to do. Adjusted cabinet hinges. Wiped down the fridge door. Unloaded the dishwasher, then reloaded it, just for something to touch besides the documents sitting on my table. At 1:47 p.m., Melissa called without a greeting. "Daniel is stressed," she said. "It would help him if you could just finalize things. He's juggling a lot right now." I nearly laughed. He was stressed. She sighed dramatically when I stayed silent. "Look, Robert, sometimes older people don't realize the pressure the younger generation is under. A little cooperation would go a long way." Older people. Cooperation. My hand tightened around the phone. "I said I'd look through it," I reminded her. "Yes, but today would be ideal," she replied, voice cooling. "We're meeting with someone later who needs confirmation." "Someone? Confirmation?" But she hung up before I could ask. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in small, needling moments. Daniel sending follow-up texts with links to articles about estate planning. Melissa tagging me in a condescending Facebook post about responsible aging. A voicemail from Daniel's office line, his assistant, of all people, reminding me of a pending document review. He'd involved his assistant. I reheated leftovers for dinner. Couldn't taste any of it. The house felt heavier than usual, like each framed photograph was leaning in, waiting for me to admit something I didn't want to. At 7:03 p.m., Daniel showed up unannounced. No knock, just walked in as if the door belonged to him already. "You didn't answer my messages," he said, combing a hand through his hair like I was the stressful part of his day. "Dad, we need this done. We're trying to protect you. Please stop dragging your feet." Dragging my feet. The phrase landed with a dull thud. He moved around my kitchen while he talked, opening drawers, moving my mail pile to the side, tidying things that didn't need tidying, subtle, unconscious rearranging. Claiming space. "We're meeting with our financial planner tomorrow," he continued. "She wants everything in motion. So can you be ready by morning?" There it was. Not a request. A timeline. I looked at him, really looked. The twitch in his jaw. The forced calm. The way he never quite met my eyes when he said the word protection. I felt that crack inside me widen, faint but unmistakable. "Dad?" he pressed. I set down my fork and folded my hands. "I'll think," I said. He exhaled sharply, annoyed, disappointed, maybe both. "Fine. But don't make this harder than it needs to be." After he left, the house fell silent again. But it wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that hums beneath the skin, the kind that warns you something is shifting, whether you're ready or not. This time, the crack didn't fade. It stretched. Thinned. And somewhere deep inside, I felt the unmistakable truth. I was reaching the end of something. And once I crossed that line, nothing would ever go back to the way it was. By the third day, Daniel's urgency had evolved into something sharper, less like concern, more like possession. I noticed it first in the small things. My mail pile had been rearranged again, this time alphabetized. My phone charger had been moved to a different outlet. For convenience. Even my calendar app showed a new alert I hadn't created. Document signing, pending. I stared at that notification for a long, cold minute. I hadn't invited him into my phone. But somehow he'd been there. By noon, I found out how. A soft ping sounded from my laptop, an email logged in after months of disuse. I clicked it absent-mindedly, expecting a newsletter or banking reminder. Instead, a new message appeared. Subject: Draft Transfer Agreement, Hale Residence. From Melissa.Hale@. My stomach dropped. I opened the attachment with hands that felt older than they had the day before. And there it was, 16 pages, dense with legal phrasing. Not routine. Not benign. Not for my benefit. Halfway down the second page, I found the line that stole the air from my lungs. Upon execution, all ownership rights transfer immediately and irrevocably to the recipient. Recipient, Daniel Hale. So that was the urgency. The pressure. The assistant's reminder. Melissa. Waiting in the car. Every comment about protecting me. Not protection. Acquisition. As I read, my chest tightened with something I didn't want to name: grief, betrayal, and a simmering clarity beginning to take shape beneath both. Then came the sound of a key turning in my door. Daniel stepped inside like a man entering property he already believed was his. He didn't apologize. Didn't ask. Just glanced around, nodding at the clean counters. You tidied, he said, as if checking progress. I hadn't touched anything. He walked over to my laptop before I could close it. His eyes flicked to the screen, and he froze. You shouldn't open documents you don't understand, he said quietly. There it was, his first real slip. No softening. No fake patience. Just a blunt warning. I understand enough, I replied. He blinked, surprised at my tone. Then he recovered, smoothing his voice. Dad, look, you're making this harder. Mom would have wanted you taken care of. This house, it's too much responsibility. And frankly, he hesitated, then finished, you're not managing things well anymore. The words hit harder than I expected. Not managing things well anymore. A judgment disguised as concern. A son speaking to a liability, not a father. He kept talking, something about appointments, deadlines, people waiting on him, but I barely heard it. My pulse was loud, steady, rising. For the first time in my life, I looked at my son and saw a stranger wearing his features. He tapped the signature line on the printed draft he'd brought. Let's finish this tonight. Something in me finally stopped bending. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just stopped. I closed the laptop gently, almost calmly, and slid the papers to my side of the table. I'll take care of it, I said. He mistook my stillness for compliance. He had no idea that in that moment, quiet as a held breath, something inside me had shifted permanently. A private, silent decision. Not spoken aloud. Not negotiable. And absolutely final. The shift inside me didn't arrive like thunder. It was quieter, an internal leveling, a click of gears finally locking into place. By morning, the panic and disbelief of the last few days had cooled into something steadier. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Clarity. I moved through the house without noise, touching each surface as if mapping a battlefield. Daniel's fingerprints lingered everywhere. Folders he'd rearranged, drawers he'd helped organize, the faint smell of his cologne near my laptop. None of it bothered me now. It simply confirmed what I needed to know. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote one word: verify. Then I began. First task, my accounts. My fingers trembled slightly as I logged into my banking app. Old habit, not fear. I reviewed every statement for the last 6 months, marking transactions that weren't mine, checking passwords, updating recovery settings. It took an hour. 2. I didn't rush. Every click felt like reclaiming a piece of ground Daniel had quietly stepped over. Second task, the documents. The routine papers sat where I'd left them. But this time, I approached them not as a father looking for reassurance, but as a man examining evidence. I photographed each page, front, back, margin notes, uploaded them to a new encrypted folder, labeled plainly, Home Risks. My heart barely moved as I did it. The emotional weight was gone. These were no longer symbols of betrayal. They were data. Third task, information. I opened my email and searched for names I hadn't thought of in years. Former colleagues, the accountant who prepared taxes before Diane died, even the attorney who handled my will a decade ago. I drafted messages slowly, carefully, confirming facts I already suspected but needed recorded. My inbox began to fill with quiet truths. At noon, Joan called. I let it ring twice before answering. You sound different, she said immediately. I am, I replied, and left it there. She didn't push. I heard her nod through the phone. She offered to review the documents again. I told her I already had everything I needed. And it was true, not because I understood every clause, but because I finally understood Daniel. By evening, the house felt colder, not physically, but in the way of relationships shifting shape. Daniel hadn't texted since morning. Melissa hadn't called. The silence between us stretched, thin but taut, like a wire pulled too tight. I used the quiet. Updated passwords. Printed account summaries. Locked hard copies of important papers in a metal box I hadn't touched since Diane passed. I even drove across town to make copies at a 24-hour print shop, just to ensure nothing stayed in one place. Each action was small on its own. Together, they formed something I didn't dare name yet. When I returned home, twilight had settled over the neighborhood. Porch lights flickered on. Cars eased reluctantly into driveways after long workdays. Families gathered behind warm windows. I watched them for a moment, feeling strangely outside of all of it, not lonely, just elevated above the noise. Inside, my kitchen was dark. The table was empty except for the stack of papers Daniel had pushed across the days earlier. Tomorrow, he'd come expecting closure. Expecting surrender. Expecting the father he'd grown used to. But tonight, standing in the doorway, I felt the final piece of myself settle into place. I was ready. Not to fight, but to finish something only I fully understood. And the quiet before that moment? It was almost peaceful. Daniel arrived 5 minutes early the next morning. Of course he did. He walked into my kitchen with the same rehearsed confidence he'd worn all week, Melissa close behind him, her smile already strained. They took their usual seats, his elbows spread wide, hers angled away as if the room were beneath her. The stack of routine papers waited on the table, exactly where he expected them to be. "Good," he said. "You're ready." I slid a different folder toward him. Thick. Neatly clipped. "No," I said. "You are." He hesitated, then opened it. The first page stole the color from his face. Property deed. My name. Only my name. Stamped, dated, certified. Behind it, account statements, clarified wills, notarized confirmations. Melissa leaned in, her breath catching. "What is this?" "The truth," I said. Daniel swallowed. "Dad, you didn't need to. You tried to transfer my home to yourself," I said flatly. "Without permission. Without honesty. And you involved your wife, your assistant, and your financial planner." He flinched. Melissa looked at him sharply. "I didn't know he saw all this," she whispered. I placed my phone on the table. Screen lit. Voice recordings. Screenshots. Emails. Everything backed up twice, stored in cloud folders they would never access. Daniel tried to recover. "We were protecting you." "No," I said. "You were protecting yourselves." Silence stretched across the kitchen. Cold, clean, final. "I've spoken to an attorney," I continued. "The house is secured. The accounts are secured. Any attempt to interfere again goes through him." Melissa finally exhaled, slow and defeated. "So what now?" "No," I said. "You leave." Daniel's eyes narrowed, searching for the version of me he used to manipulate. He didn't find him. "You're cutting us off?" he asked. "I'm setting boundaries," I replied. "What you do with them is up to you." He stood abruptly, but not in defiance, more like he needed the ground back under him. Melissa gathered her purse with shaky hands. Neither of them looked at me as they walked out. The door closed softly. No slammed hinges. No shouting down the hallway. Just closure. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, the house exhaled with me. That afternoon, I drove to the local park, a place Diane and I used to visit. I sat on a bench beneath a jacaranda tree, watching petals fall onto the path. I checked the weather app. I scrolled through old photos. I took a slow walk with no destination. Simple things I hadn't felt free to do in a long time. Later, back home, I brewed tea and opened the windows. Evening air drifted through the house, carrying the scent of citrus and asphalt cooling after sunset. The papers were gone. The tension was gone. The quiet remained, but now it was the kind that felt earned. This was my home again. My life again. On my terms. And some boundaries, once set, never move again.